We're excited to have you guys. This is probably the second Abacus event overall, but this is like the first time we're actually looking to do, a little bit more of a, let's call it a fireside chat minus the fire. And also, really excited to have Alan here with us. It's a pretty fun time because we get to ask him a bunch of interesting questions as he's in the middle of a few new opportunities as well. So yeah, and basically what I'd like to do is just ask Alan a few questions, kind of get that started, and then please, I'm gonna try to open it up to some of you guys because you probably have far more interesting questions. So I'll also leave that up to you guys. So when we started the idea for this event, Alan was actually VP of Finance at ClassPass, which is probably what you all saw in the invite. And basically since then, Alan, many of you may not know, has now become the VP of Finance over at Kitchen Surfing.
That's right. That was a few weeks ago.
So, things move fast in startup world.
Yes, they do.
But yeah, so prior to that, Alan was also VP of Finance at How About We, and VP of Finance at Brunswick Group, and prior to that, VP of Finance at The Ladders. And so, needless to say, I could go on, but it feels like there's this trend here where when companies kind of start reaching this inflection point, for some reason they're picking up the phone and they're kind of calling Alan. And so I just wanted to kind of start off and understand a little bit about, what has that process been in building out this kind of brand for yourself, or this, how do you get that call? How does that keep happening?
That's a good question, and it sort of happened. It started off kind of happened randomly at The Ladders. Before that, I was at a big accounting firm, and I worked at Viacom, and it just never felt truly connected to the companies that I was working with, and ended up at The Ladders as a client of theirs, and just said, wow, wait a minute, this is what I really like doing. And so as companies started to scale and kind of events like these, just got to know more people and found what I really like to do, which is to get into companies that are really early stage and help build out a finance and accounting infrastructure. It just sort of built from that. And I found New York is such a great place for that because there really is this is proof of it, a very vibrant and active startup community, whether you're an engineer or a designer or a finance person. So it just sort of builds upon itself.
Have you tried, when people, when this kitchen surfing opportunity came up, for example, was it that they thought, oh, we need to do some kind of operational overhaul, or we need some major process changes? Have you kind of made a niche for yourself, and that's how they know that Alan's the right fit, or is it a little more opportunistic?
A little bit of both. What I find though is, as I've gotten to know more people, founders of companies realize fairly early on that building a finance infrastructure is so crucial, because whatever you may save by not doing that, more often than not will cost you, whether it's a compliance issue, whether it's a reporting issue, whether it's you're going out for your next round of funding and you don't quite have what you need to do to get that done. So I think it's over time there's been this realization that finance has become as crucial to an early stage company as the engineers, as the designers, and the marketing folks as well. So it's kind of one of those key pillars, I think.
And then does it actually, when you join, when those expectations are being set in the first place, then is it, I'm just curious because I feel like at different startups it's probably a bit different. When either at ClassPass or at Kitchen Surfing or even before, when you're having that discussion around, Alan is joining and we're gonna basically remain together for the long haul, or is it Alan's coming in for this set SWAT team, we're gonna do this for a year and a half, and really clean up shop, and then Alan's gonna go do that somewhere else?
It kind of depends on the company. With How About We, the company was purchased, so it really wasn't an option for me. It depends a lot on the company and what they need after year one and year two. Personally, I like the earlier stage, and I think sometimes when it gets to a point where it's developed into a fully functioning finance department, it may be ready for somebody else who has that better experience. So I think what I've seen in startups, is the evolution is fast, and what's needed at any given point in time is different, whether it's on the engineering side or the marketing side, and the person that can maybe develop it in its earlier stage might not be the right person, or want to do it at a later stage, likewise, any of the other disciplines. So it remains to be seen what will happen with kitchen surfing after 2 weeks, but we'll take it day by day.
Yeah, and obviously a lot of the other people here are also at many rapidly growing companies, and as they're all kind of looking to manage their career over the long haul, what are some of the kind of pro tips after having done this now several times that you can kind of offer in terms of how they think about timing, in terms of like setting themselves up for success there?
Sure. I mean, one thing to think about, a number of things, but one is startup time and real time are completely different. So, someone's shaking their head. Yeah. No fooling, Captain Obvious. Yeah. So a year to startup. I mean, I was at the Ladders for 3 years, which felt like a lifetime. And so the moves that you make may come up more quickly than you might anticipate. Whereas I was at Viacom for 10 years, and there were people that were there 10 years before me and are still there. So it's really a lot about comfort with change and adaptability. I'll kind of make the same point because it's so important. Events like these and getting to know other people in the startup community is really important because you get to learn more about what you like, what you don't like, whether you like kind of the B2C or the B2B, whether it's the recurring revenue model or all the other things that are out there. So you start to get a sense of what you like, and then needless to say, the more you like something, the more the passion grows, and you succeed at that.
Interesting. I guess one of the things that we've been thinking about a lot lately is culture, and I imagine that from a finance team's perspective, and then making sure that the host kind of accepts this new entrant. What is it like? How do you think about culture fit of both like within the finance team, and then also like the finance team within the organization overall?
Sure. I look around and see a lot of people wearing jeans, so right off the bat, that coming into an organization to start, you can't come in like the finance guys that may have seen at your audit firm that comes in there. So it's super important to understand the culture and the nuances of the company. So, and what I have seen is the product drives that a lot. So for example, I was at ClassPass, which is a fitness company, a subscription company for fitness classes. People were super passionate about fitness and fitness classes. And so that's a pervasive feeling in the culture. At Kitchen Surfing, people are very much about food, and we talk about food all day, and it's so we eat food. So thinking about that, and then to your point about how finance fits into a culture, that's hard at any company. I think sadly there's a stereotype of the finance people as being the ones that are just going to say no matter what you say. That's too much, I'm not going to spend it. And so those barriers are hard to overcome. I mean, there's no question, because you do have to walk that fine line between being sort of the disciplinarian on one hand, and then making sure that the business can run as effectively and efficiently on the other hand. I have no magic answer for that, other than it's so situation dependent, but just always keep in the back of your mind that the company won't have the controls, it won't have the discipline. It is going to function much differently than maybe, I don't know if any of you have worked for any big companies before, with PO processes and levels of approval. And I was talking to somebody about Sarbanes-Oxley, like, what the heck is that? So I mean, so it's just kind of getting comfortable in the discomfort, and it's hard for finance, or some finance too. It's hard for me because finance people tend to be the debit equals a credit. And what do you mean you want to do that? You want to get a pinball machine? Come on. So yeah, it's just kind of getting your arms around it. It's going to be a little scary, and it's not going to always tick in time. You have to sort of prioritize, and that's where it becomes really crucial to understand the business drivers and what it's all about.
Yeah, we actually, it's funny, we run into this a lot ourselves, because expense management tends to be the point at which the employees and the finance team tend to interact the most. And sometimes we have some prospective customers come, and basically they want to take this very, let's call it like crossing the T's and dotting the I's, but to an extent where it's like very rigid. And then on the other end, there's like this spectrum of kind of putting some trust in the employees, but like checking and verifying afterwards. And on the one extreme, I remember Patrick at Stripe, he literally asked us, can we publicly expose all of our expenses to all of the employees? Because that way they can just learn what the policy is themselves by watching what everyone is doing. And, that's on like the one end of the extreme, but, like what's your view on like how you find that balance, and, which kind of philosophy do you feel like kind of resonates?
Not publicly expenses. I just had having nightmares thinking about that. I do think it's important though to empower people, because number one, at a startup, you're not going to always have the time and the luxury. I don't mean to pick on my poor wife because she's not here, but she works at Time Inc. And I mean, they have a whole department that's all they do is look at expense reports. Like, we all don't have that luxury, so you have to have the trust and faith in your managers. And again, it's about understanding what the business is. And when you're a startup, you don't have tons of cash. And so understanding that fine line between, no, we don't want you staying at Motel 8, but no, you don't need to stay at the Ritz either. And kind of, hopefully the tone at the top sets that the right way, where I always call it the policy of common sense. Because personally, I don't like policies, because policies need to be enforced, and that's extra work. And then policies have exceptions, and that's extra work. So really, if people understand what's going on, that's a good role for finance, is to help educate them that, hey, look, we're going to, especially, I'll give my first plug for Abacus, but especially with Abacus, where you can have real-time reimbursements. Like, look, you're not going to be out of pocket. We're going to get you paid in time, but you kind of now need our ask to you is that you use your common sense and your good judgment on what you do. And I find that helps a lot. Okay, it is a bit of a give and take.
One thing you've been tasked with multiple times is building teams.
Mm-hmm.
And, obviously culture fits within that and the organization. And, what has your approach been? Because I know now in the last 2 companies, you've pretty much been the first finance person on that team.
Yeah.
3 companies. And, like what, for those people who are now like out here trying to build out those first few people on that team, what is your approach? Like, how do you kind of start to think about that, and what mistakes have been made, and what like lessons have you learned from that?
Mistakes, I can talk about them forever because there are tons. So just a little bit more background. I never set out to become a finance person. I was an English major and ended up in this sort of by happenstance. So I always have a soft spot for people that have non-traditional backgrounds, because I feel that we can all learn kind of the basic skill sets for accounting, but I think especially in a startup environment, sometimes having a bit of a non-traditional background is helpful, because you're dealing with others that have a non-traditional background, because people don't go to school to study to be a founder of an expense reporting system. There's no course for that. So it's about innate knowledge and understanding the marketplace and all those things that that people look for. So that's the first thing I look for is that kind of curiosity is a huge thing for me. And when I've made mistakes, I didn't pay enough attention to that, because I felt I needed to get that person, as long as they can jump in there and do the debits and credits, and I don't care about anything else, and that has never worked out well. So curiosity is really important, and passion for the product, and passion for what a startup environment is like, which is chaos, which is fluidity, which is, are we going to get funding? Because if we don't, which is the likelihood or possibility that, someone wants to buy us. So there's a whole lot of things that come with that instability, unpredictability. It can be a little scary. So someone who's comfortable with all of those things. And I mean, it goes without saying, good financial sense, good skills, good background in numbers, but really the passion and the curiosity and the adaptability will always works out better.
I do have more questions, but I wanted to give you guys a chance if anybody else had some questions they wanted to ask Alan or chat with Alan about.
Yes?
If you're starting a finance group, what are the top, not even 3, top 2 hires you want to make? Is it a bookkeeper and maybe an FP&A person, or love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, that's a good question. The cop-out answer, it depends, but in a sense it does, because I look at it, where are the risks of the company, And if it's a company, so for example, at How About we were more on the fundraising trail. Getting a good FP&A person was really important. At ClassPass, where we kind of gone through our fundraising, but now we were developing, we're going overseas, and we're putting in a new accounting system and trying to really bump up the reporting function. Getting a good accountant was a little bit more important. It's too soon to tell right now at kitchen surfing. It will kind of depend on where we end up on the fundraising trail. But I think it depends on I guess the stage of where you're at. But like with any startup, you sort of, even if you get that good accounting person, they better be comfortable with FP&A, and if you get that good FP&A person, they better be at least have a working knowledge of the financial statements and some of those things, because they're going to be crossing borders.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
So there are two, at least from what I hear people say, there are two train of thoughts. One is that you have to be a very big expert in one domain, like you're working with SaaS, so you go on to SaaS companies, you can never work in hardware companies. But the other idea is that numbers are numbers, and if you have the curiosity and adaptability, you can work in one type of startup today and another one down the road. So how quickly do you think a person can learn the new industry and become an expert in the new industry?
Two different questions. I don't know if anyone ever truly becomes an expert in any industry because they change so quickly.
But enough to be dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. Personally, I think very quickly, but I've heard the same things that you've heard, and it frustrates me a little bit too, in the sense that, and I think part of the reason is at maybe the CEO level, they think that, okay, this person knows SaaS, I don't have to worry about it, and may not want to invest the time or the energy to kind of get them up to speed, not realizing that at the level that they're hiring, that person is capable of doing that themselves. So I think it's kind of a comfort thing for people. Like I said, I don't agree with it. When I go to hire people, that's kind of the last thing that I would look at is do they have kitchen surfing experience? It's again, it goes back to, are they intelligent? Are they passionate? Are they curious? We're not performing, I don't mean to denigrate our profession, but we're not performing brain surgery or flying an airplane. I mean, we're working with numbers, we're all comfortable in that environment. So whether it's, okay, how do you recognize revenue in a SaaS environment versus a hardware environment? Well, you can get there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just knowing what you know now, having gone through the experience that you have, what advice would you go back and give yourself when you first started your time at Lab?
That's an awesome question. I mean, a couple things. One, I would have started sooner, to be perfectly honest with you. I never knew I was going to like it in the way that I took to it. So I guess that's one thing I have had the advantage of hindsight.
Meaning like left Viacom early.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Got out of the big kind of corporate world much sooner than I did. As one can tell by my gray hair, I tend to be a little bit older than some of the folks that I work with. So I suppose that's one big thing.